And just to kind of bring us to speed, I wanted to jump off from Glenda's wonderful video from last month. So some questions that you left us with, Glenda, were how do we make this easier for ourselves? How do we remove or lessen the obstacles? And this is all in reference to making 2020 great. So really, like just finally taking action on the things that we've been thinking about for a long time. And today's talk is in particular on the act of resistance and kind of breaking through that resistance, which I've been really thinking about that a lot lately. And in the yoga classes I've been teaching, I've been talking a lot about yoga and union, and how it really is this union of two opposing forces, like the yin and the yang. And when I think about resistance, I think a lot about the heart versus the mind. We'll be talking a lot about that today. But before we dive in, I also wanted to bring up some astrology, just because that's always fun. So I couldn't find anything from Chani on the new moon today, but I did find this wonderful excerpt that described this new moon as the first major luminary of Pisces season 2020. And both the sun and moon will be in this emotional water sign. It says Pisces energy is super dreamy, feelings oriented, and creative. So we can expect to feel extra intuitive, romantic, and artistically inspired under this transit. And thanks to some of the other planetary aspects hitting the moon, also a great time to take advantage of cultivating our natural talents and interests, hanging out with friends, and embracing life's spontaneity and synchronicity. The last bit that they shared was February's new moon is one of the most positive lunar energies of 2020. And this was from astrologer Narayana Montufar. I hope I'm saying her name right. Probably not, but that's okay. With all of the natal planets making their most positive side available to us, the days surrounding this new moon can function as the first step toward the realization of a dream. Sounds like perfect timing. In other words, if you've been waiting for a good time to kick off a project or get through a rough patch on the road to a current goal, this moon marks an ideal opportunity to do. I just love this stuff because I feel like it's so appropriate, and it allows us to feel like we're in sync. Like even when things are kind of tumultuous, you read an excerpt like this and it's like, oh, well, it's supposed to be tumultuous, so it's okay. A little bit of magic.
That's really quite interesting because I don't follow astrology, so I'm always fascinated to hear about it after I've done certain things. And so I'm in this incredible period of the visual is around a hamster in a cage. And the Thanksgiving weekend, I thought, okay, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I'm not sure of the direction, but I need to take action on this goal that I have, which is to find a place to live in Italy. And literally 10 minutes to midnight on that Sunday, I booked to go to Italy for 6 weeks. So I'm leaving April 1 to May 15. So listening to what you just read now, I want to say, oh, okay, so that there's the driver, right? There's that push, that drive of, all right, you haven't got it all figured out. You really don't know what you're doing, but this is your goal. So you just got to go and take a step.
Yeah.
So it kind of validates that I'm not maybe totally crazy.
Right? I know. I always find it validating.
Yeah. So I like it coming after because it sort of validates,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. I think it's kind of more interesting to read after sometimes because when you're in it, you're just in it. So But then
Mhm.
after it makes it just reminds you you're part of a bigger whole.
Exactly. It really, really does. It reinforces that. So yeah, thank you. I'm not totally crazy.
I'm glad it landed.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen with you both now. So let me know, can you see it?
Yeah.
All right. So removing the invisible barriers keeping you from your dreams. And as I said, this is all about making 2020 great. And one theme that I feel is surfacing, and Glenda and I have talked a lot about this, and this is kind of similar to the astrology, those themes that you hear all over the place popping up, and it makes you feel like, oh, this is really something. So the theme that keeps popping up for me is this idea of discipline. I was thinking about it this morning. I'll share a funny story with you later, but yeah, this idea of discipline, and in particular, discipline as self-care, because I think often we've thought of discipline as there's been a lot of negative connotations that we associate with discipline, or that it's like very hard-edged. You have to be disciplined, and then we think of how we're not disciplined enough or whatever, and we can beat ourselves over the head for that. But really trying to shift that frame and look at it more as an idea of self-care, how discipline is really about us holding ourselves accountable to what's truly important to us. So that's something I've been thinking about a lot, and really starting to notice where I'm from a kind, curious place, but where I'm not necessarily holding myself accountable to that, where I let it slip. And we're going to talk more about that. Before we get going, though, I thought we'd remove the not so invisible barriers. So just making sure our phones are out of the way, and that other things are closed so that we can be really present. And, you know, with this small group, it's not such a big deal, but I know moving forward, if anybody's watching this in the future, that's really important. And that's one of those things, is all these distractions that we have in our lives, how those little things are getting in the way of the things that are truly meaningful to us. I think we can find it really important to answer that text right away, but is it really important? It's important to start paying attention to these things. So this is an opportunity to practice that. And then next, I wanted us just to take a moment to connect to our intention. So why we're here in the first place, why we've carved out this time to be together. And then, of course, the intention of what is it that you're dreaming about? If it's Italy or creating a program or whatever it might be, what are the things that are really important to us, to our hearts? So just taking a moment to connect to that. And then I wanted to pose this question of, what would it mean to you to look back in December, so 10 months from now, and see a 2020 that you are so proud of? So I think often we can think about the things that we didn't do, or the things that we had wished we'd done 12 months ago. But what would it mean to us to look back and really feel like we put absolutely everything into it? So imagining how good it would feel to ourselves to wake up and know that we did everything in our power to make our dreams come true, and to move that needle forward, and to really live full, heart-centered lives. So I know both of you, but if anybody's watching this beyond this moment, and even for the two of you, I mean, you might not know some of these things, but my name's Sydney. I'm a life coach and a yoga instructor, and I currently live in Comox, British Columbia, although I met Glenda and Anna out in Toronto when I lived there. So I'm a pretty new transplant to Vancouver Island in Canada. You'll see on the left this beautiful picture of me and my sister. I have an older sister. She actually created this compilation of, you might recognize the characters below, that's Lloyd and Harry from Dumb and Dumber. And we realized that we are the spitting image of those two fellows. So clearly, I grew up in a household with humor, which I'm very grateful for. I had a pretty nuclear family upbringing, two parents, two wonderful parents, and a wonderful family. One thing, though, as I've grown up, that I've come to recognize about my family is I come from a long line of perfectionists and a long line of people who are always looking at how to make things better, which means it can be a pretty judgmental place to grow up in, which is, of course, there's pros and cons to those things. But there was a lot of I think, internal dialogue that over the years I've come to recognize in myself. And it's part of the reason why I have become a life coach and love what I do. But to give you more background, I grew up in this wonderful family, pretty, I want to say normal, or the kind of quintessential what you'd expect. So there were all the expectations of go to school, graduate, go to university, get a job, get married, have a family. And I was following along that trajectory quite perfectly, actually. And then I was in the advertising business as a graphic designer after I graduated from university, and recognized that I was really, really unhappy. I did not agree with the lifestyle I was living. I was surrounded by a lot of really wonderful people, so I made a lot of incredible friendships through that time, but it was sort of that disconnect between what my heart wanted and what I felt I should do. And after about 8 years in the advertising world, I quit my job and went freelance and started traveling quite a bit, going on ziplining adventures, which what you don't see in this picture is me bawling my eyes out right before I
Yeah.
But I did a lot of soul searching, and have now found my way to what I know is my true passion, which is life coaching, and also teaching yoga, which I feel is life coaching, but just from a different perspective. And I'm also living on the West Coast. So that's a little bit about me. And I wanted to talk to you today, or begin this this conversation, starting with the idea of these two fundamental truths that I really, really believe and have discovered through my own travels. Truth number one, and this comes from one of my favorite mentors, an incredible woman named Marie Forleo, who she says, we are all a one-time mega event in the universe. And the reason why this is so important to connect to is because we have this one life, and we are all here for a reason. We are all part of this bigger, vast sphere, and while that can sometimes make us feel absolutely minuscule, we are part of it. And so it is really important that we understand the value of our life and the value of ourselves, and just know that we are worthy and we are meant to be here. So that is one thing. And I think this also connects us to how we started this talk, which is connecting to astrology, because again, it connects us to that bigger picture. The second truth that I wanted to bring up is that we are always creating. So even when we are resisting things, that is an act of creation. I think that creativity is the human superpower. And all we have to do to really own that superpower is start building intention behind it. So just like if you think of any superhero, they could use their powers for evil, or they can use it for good. if we don't hone our superpower of creativity, then we are just letting it kind of yield itself into the world, and we can do so with a lot more power. So when we talk about resistance, which today this is what this talk is all about, is figuring out what we are creating through our resistance. Resistance shows up often as overwhelm, frustration, blame, insecurity, fear. In other words, it's our feelings, and our feelings are what drive our creative action. So when we think about our creativity, it's coming from the feelings that we have inside. Our feelings are energy. It's this invisible thing or vibration that comes through our bodies. And again, we can wield that intentionally or unintentionally. Where our feelings come from is our thoughts. So our brain is that piece of the puzzle that actually creates those vibrations within us. Therefore, by directing our brain, we have much more power in directing our creativity and what we create in the world. So when we talk about invisible barriers, our thoughts are the invisible barriers to our success. Mm-hmm. Or they're the creative key to our success. So this is that opposing force that we're talking about. What was that, Glenda?
It's a nice reframe.
Thank you.
It's the yin and the yang, isn't it?
It totally is.
Yeah.
It totally is. Yeah. And yeah, I think, what was I going to say about that? Yeah, I think our thoughts, it's this thing that just goes on autopilot. Like half the time we don't even realize that we're having thoughts, but we're always having thoughts, and it's our thoughts that drive the actions that we produce in the world. So where is our power in all of this? And it's through our awareness. So starting to cultivate that awareness and becoming intimately aware of the things our brain is telling us and how we are relating to those things. So I think often we can jump to, oh, I just want to change it. I just want to change. If it means that, the bad thoughts are producing bad results, then I just want to have good thoughts. And I just want to slap some good thoughts on it. But we all know how. Are you, both of you, familiar with the character Pollyanna?
Yeah.
Yeah. I always think about, it's like Pollyanna-ing through life.
Yeah.
It, like slapping a positive thought it feels like bullshit. The thing is like the belief behind the thought has to be there. So unless you actually believe the thought, then you're just Pollyanna-ing. You're just slapping some positivity on top, and that can become really draining. So
if I can just add, do you remember I don't know if it was a video, but it was a young child, a girl standing in front of a mirror and repeating to herself over and over and over again, because she'd obviously been coached. Do you remember, Glenda?
Yeah.
What's her name?
I am good. I am beautiful. I am.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, what you're saying reminds me of that. And I think there are a lot of people who think that if they say it enough, it will be. But I think you're honing in to something. You can't just layer positive on top if the negative is still there.
Yeah, and what's beautiful about that video too, I think, and I remember it so well, I think she said, "I love my Jessicas." That's the part I always remember. What's wonderful is, she was a pretty blank slate. And this is the thing with children, is it's so much easier at the earlier age, because they're essentially getting new programming right away. So by her, she's building that belief right from the get-go. When we have these built-in patterns that we've been living with for 20, 30, 40 years, that is a much deeper programming to start uninstalling. And so the awareness piece is so important. And I think the hardest part with awareness is building that awareness from a place of curiosity and humor and kindness. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when I give some examples, but it's so easy to just start punishing ourselves for things that we see that aren't helpful. So as soon as we start seeing the thoughts and thinking, oh, that's a bad thought, labeling it bad, then we can just start beating ourselves up over the head with it. But yeah, I'm getting off on a tangent. So coming back, I think the awareness is the first piece of the puzzle that we have to really connect to, and understanding what our brain is telling us. Okay. So a tool that I became familiar with in the last year, I've been a coach for about 3 years now, but I'm always trying to upgrade my skills. And I found this tool in the past year. For me, this has been one of the best ways I've learned how to unpack my thoughts, but not only my thoughts, what my thoughts are producing. And by actually slowing down what's happening and seeing the steps or uncovering the steps to the results that I'm having, to what I'm creating in my life, it's allowed me to really, it's been quite eye-opening, I think. So the model is these 5 steps. It's these 5 ways that we break down our creative process, essentially. So we start with the circumstance. This is a very key piece of the puzzle, is that our circumstances are simply the facts in our lives. So there's no judgment associated with them. They are neither good nor bad, although sometimes that can be difficult to see, but they are completely neutral. So the circumstance, then our brain will create a thought associated with that circumstance, or a multitude of thoughts, which is usually the case. So thoughts, what your brain is saying. Those thoughts then create feelings, or that energetic vibration in the body. And those feelings create actions, what we do, and then the actions produce a result. So that's the concept, but let's look at it in a more real life scenario. So I created one for myself related to this webinar. This is my first webinar, really, outside of a couple practice ones, so I was nervous about it. And my brain immediately wanted to tell me there's not enough time to prepare. I'm moving, I'm finding all of these reasons why there's not enough time to prepare for this, which then creates a feeling of worry. The worry then causes me to start spinning in more negative thoughts. Think about all the things I have to do, in brackets, that aren't necessarily even important, and do those things instead of preparing. I start writing to-do lists. So this is interesting too, because I think sometimes the things that we'll do, the actions we'll take, will look like they're productive actions, but they're still taking away from actually doing the thing we're meant to be doing. I stop preparing. I stop being present to what is truly important to me, which is helping other people, coaching other people, putting my work out there. And the last bit was cut off. So I'm sorry, I can't remember what that bit was. But all of this ends up resulting in, funny enough, I don't have as much time to prepare for the thing that I wanted to do. So what's really interesting about this, and I don't know if you've both heard the phrase, but thoughts become things. It's literally our brain is creating the results that we do or do not want. So by having this thought, I actually create the same thing.
Well, it's the boomerang effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever you put out there is what you're going to get back.
Law of attraction.
Absolutely. Radar, I mean, we pull it all back in. Yeah. Bounces out, comes back. Yeah.
Now, in the past, and still, when I'm not aware of these things, this is exactly what happens. Through building awareness and starting to recognize it sooner and sooner and sooner, I'm able to interject, and I'm able to create a different pattern or create a different thought. Another example that I'll give you. This is with a client of mine who's a brilliant, brilliant writer. She writes for a Canadian television show. And she was trying to write a pilot for her own passion project. So she was having trouble getting her work done. And so the circumstance is sitting down to write. Neutral circumstance, neither good nor bad. She had this thought of, I have to do this. And this is an interesting one to pay attention to as well. Any shoulds, have tos, they're really interesting thoughts to start paying attention to, and it's a good key. So anytime have to or should comes up, it's good to write it down. The feeling she was having was overwhelm, and the actions that she was producing, she had the inaction of not being focused. She stopped creating ideas. She started being reluctant to write. So procrastinating, started thinking her ideas are all dumb, starts avoiding writing by finding other things to do, and stops believing in herself. The result produced, don't get as much done, and therefore I now have to do this. So I think that's the interesting thing too, is procrastination is this tool that we use to help quiet the thoughts. So if we wait long enough, then we have to do it, and we don't even allow our brain to think of all the negative thoughts anymore because we'd have to do it so fast.
Maybe that's not such a bad thing then.
Well, yeah. Although how much better could it be if
absolutely.
we learned how to,
if the brain could get out of the way.
The brain could get out of the way.
And it's like more pressure to us, right? More
pressure. And I think, and it's so much less enjoyable. Mm-hmm. So part of, I talked about the theme of discipline, but Glenda and I are also, this year is all about joy. And by bringing more discipline into our lives, we can bring so much more joy. Mm-hmm. So a big part of that is starting to recognize the thoughts and shift them. And I really think of the model like exercise for our brain. Mm-hmm. So this is another example. This was a woman who she cut her hair quite short. She went to the hairdresser and was very open-minded and wanted to do something different. And the hairdresser said, well, we're actually doing a fundraiser right now where you can donate your hair. And they turn it into wigs for cancer patients. And so she thought that was a great idea. And so she went ahead and she got 11 inches of her hair cut off. And the thought in her mind was, my life is ruined. She hated her haircut. She thought her life was ruined. She felt depressed. And the actions that were produced from that thought and those feelings were, she yelled at her hair in the mirror, so she got a hate on for her hair and her looks. She complained to her husband nonstop. She would ruminate on how awful she thought she looked and how long it would take to grow her hair back. She had zero sense of humor, and she was a very humorous woman. And she stopped going out in public. So the thought, my life is ruined, meant that she was ruining her life in every moment. She was no longer enjoying herself. And she's also a coach. So she coached herself. So this is an example of where the model can also come into play. So we start creating the awareness around what thoughts are just on autopilot. What are the thoughts that are just coming up? And then you can start to create new models once you see that and you think, well, what do I actually want? And what do I actually believe? And so she brought herself back to that initial intention that she had, why she agreed to do this in the first place. And she created a new thought, which was, I love that I donated my hair. That made her feel grateful. And she just kept kind of like that little girl in the mirror. She kept reminding herself of this thought and of this intention. And that made her feel grateful. And that made her stop complaining. It made her stop blaming her hairdresser. It made her start imagining who received her donated hair and start to thank herself for doing it. Start thanking the hairdresser for giving her the opportunity. And she started loving the action that she took. And that created a result of a life that she was loving. It meant that she was living the life she intended to, which was a life about love and giving back. So those are some examples that I have of this model. And I thought I would pose the question, if there's something that you're working through, a dream that you're trying to make happen, and you're experiencing some resistance to it, I want to give you the option of if you'd like to do some work with the model right now with me. And
Sure.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. All right.
Glenda's been party to that most of last night for a few hours.
Well, thank you for offering, Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to give me the lowdown?
Yeah. So the circumstance is that I want to build an online presence through Instagram and Facebook for my Aging with Yoga concept. Is that what you would call it? I'm not sure what you would call it.
Okay, so you want to build an online program.
Presence.
Online presence.
Yeah, on Instagram and Facebook. And I have started it. Mm-hmm. Glenda's help. I have started it. But I'm okay, so that's the circumstance. No buts in that.
Okay.
Okay. What it brings up, sorry, I took a screenshot, so I'm just going to refer to the next letter.
It's thought. So.
Oh yes, thoughts. Okay.
So it's
thoughts.
I'll just interject here for a second. It's great, and I think you were going here anyways, but this is where I like to do a thought download, and I write down all the thoughts that I'm having.
So I should do this?
Yeah, I want you to do this.
Okay. So the thoughts are, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
It terrifies me. Why am I doing it anyway? And I'm not writing any of these down. They're just coming out of my mouth.
Can you say the last one again?
Why am I doing this anyway?
Yeah.
I don't have anything to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I stressing myself out like this? Mm-hmm. Do I really need this in my life? And fundamentally, it's just immense frustration for not knowing the tools or not having the tools and not yeah, not having the tools to be able to do it myself, because I've always done everything myself.
Right. Got it.
So what it's producing, the actions.
Well, let's slow down.
Okay.
Because the way we want to do this is we want to pick one thought out of there, and then we break that one thought down. So we could literally do a model for each one of these thoughts because they're all producing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I've got the thought, I don't know how to do this. Got the thought, this is terrifying. Why am I doing this anyway? I don't have anything to offer. Do I really need this in my life? I don't have the tools. Which thought would you like to explore first? Sometimes the way I like to say it is, which one do you feel is the most prevalent or the most powerful?
I'm terrified.
Yeah. And how does that thought make you feel?
Inept, insecure, wanting to run away from this project, and yet there's like a gut sense that I can't run away and I shouldn't run away. So there's this huge conflict in me.
So recognize
like a huge conflict in me.
Those
between,
those are even more additional thoughts.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting, right? It's like we've got the first layer of thoughts, and then we get into feelings, and this is a really this is something that we play with. Is we can think something is a feeling, but it's actually a thought.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why it's so cool to really slow it down.
Okay.
Because this is what our brain does. It just creates thoughts, and then those thoughts create more thoughts, and those create more and more and more. Where I stopped was insecure. So we want to just pick one feeling, one thought, and then one feeling. And then it's so tempting to just like dive into the pool with all of them. But from an action, we saw it right there, like the feeling of being insecure, which, by the way, is totally normal for something new that you're looking to achieve. But it's creating this action of spinning into your thoughts. That's one action.
Yeah.
What else is the insecurity producing?
Resisting.
Yeah.
So procrastinating. You know, I can't do a video because I had cold sores last week, and until that heals and there's no more red mark, then I actually can't do it. Oh, there's not enough sun coming inside my studio, so therefore I can't do it.
Yeah.
You need me to go on?
Right. We find it all the circumstances that mean that we can't do it.
Yep, I couldn't do it because my studio was painted a blue, and because there's only light coming in, you know, on the west in a window that's not centered in the room, then I had to pay $600 to get the studio painted.
Right.
White, which it now is. But then there were the cold sores, and then there were, I don't know how to set up the tripod, and yeah,
nothing's good enough. And
just
so
absolutely spinning into my thoughts.
So what's happening externally is you're perfecting the external world, So that's an action.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening internally?
Oh my God. Um, feeling feeling like I'm going to explode. Physically, literally feeling chest pains and tingling down my left hand. Like it's physically manifesting into huge stress. Mm-hmm. So yeah, feeling like I'm almost in a web. And I'm pushing out, but I can't get out. So thank God for Glenda. Late last night, where Glenda takes no prisoners and not a lot of excuses. So she, I don't know how to do this and I can't do that. And she just fires back. Here's this website. Here's the video I've done for you. Here's this, here's that. And I felt, I felt like I could breathe. I was really feeling like I couldn't breathe deeply enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really physically manifested into something very worrisome because I'm getting cold sores all the time, and yeah, it is now physically affecting me.
Right.
That's how much I've spun myself.
Why do you think our brains go there and do that?
Because I think there's a self-sabotage in all of us. And, there was just wiring in me about, you're stupid and you're a girl and you don't know how to do things and you're dumb. And, but I want to say I refuse to rest there, but I am very aware of how that little nugget of untruth has colored so many things in my career. So I went back to school and became to study architecture. I came out. Yes, there was a valid reason why I didn't go through and actually do everything that was required to get my architectural, to become an architect. So I'm an architectural designer. I sat my exams to get my BCIN number so I could stamp drawings. So I'm an architectural designer, but not an architect.
Yeah.
And I often think of the things in my life where I went so far, and there were lots of reasons why I didn't take the next step, but I ultimately think it's because of that little nugget of that little seed that was planted in me at a very, very young age that is afraid to really succeed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think ultimately our brains, as we're evolving, we're building the frontal cortex of our brains, which is the rational decision-making side. Whereas the primal side has always been the bigger part of our brain. And that part is about safety and survival. And it's all about the known world and what we know and what's certain and what's safe. And so when we push ourselves out of that known world and into new territory, that primal part of our brain is fighting back.
That's very well put. You're absolutely right.
And it's totally normal. Like we all face it to varying degrees, and our past will affect it. Absolutely. But it's it is a normal part of human evolution is to have that part of our brain yell back. And I think one of the biggest things that has been helpful is this realization that we don't have to believe our brains. Like,
right. Yeah.
and just start questioning. Like and this is why building that awareness is so key, because until we separate ourselves from the thoughts, and this is why mindfulness is so wonderful, and why we're also lucky to have found yoga and the mindfulness world, is that we have been cultivating this awareness already, starting to become the observer instead of just being in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anything, it's just start questioning the thoughts.
Right. But it's interesting, you know, even sitting, I always visualize sort of, there's the other, maybe the capital S self, you know, that sits on the shoulder here and looks in on the small s self and is so aware of what is going on. And even with that, you know, the small s self is just so strong and the thoughts are so strong, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is where intention comes in, but let's finish this model first. So 2 more questions just to help flush out the actions that I like to pose are, what have you stopped doing because of this insecurity?
I've stopped enjoying yoga. And I've stopped enjoying yoga. I now consider yoga a stressor in my life.
That's a powerful thing to recognize. What else have you stopped doing?
I've stopped having joy in my life. Everything has become a burden.
Lots of have-tos.
Yeah. That are really weighing me down.
Have you stopped feeling connected to your why? Why you want to do it in the first place?
No, I think the why, I think I still know the why. And that's where the real disconnect is, because I want to just use a huge expletive and just tell it all to, you know what, but then there's that little gut part, you know, that says, no, like, no, you know, you have something of value to offer. And I think that's the disconnect or the internal fight.
Well, it's the heart. It's that fight between the heart and the mind.
And the brain, right? Because the brain is like, this is just too difficult. You don't know how to do it. Other than Glenda, you don't have any resources. And oh my God, am I grateful for her? But you know, she lives there. I can't exactly go for coffee and say, oh, how do I download this? Or how do I? Yeah. So a real disconnect and real disconnect between wanting to throw it all away and this sense of, oh my God, that would be like betraying something really deep in you if you do that. So you can't throw it all away. But I also can't have it physically destroying my life. And it really is physically, affecting me. I've now been diagnosed with adrenal fatigue syndrome for just far, far too long, prolonged stress. So, and I have nothing to fight with, you know, hence the cold sores all the time.
Yeah.
So this has become a real thing.
Okay.
Can I offer something?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, as we're talking, I'm reminded of conversations I've certainly had over the years. So, 10 years now being out of corporate, but 5 years focused on my practice and varying degrees. So sometimes all in, sometimes off the side of my desk. But having this conversation with, Aaron, my partner who runs his own business, it's like it takes so much time, and people always have this expectation that it happens faster than what it actually does. And I think, like in many things in our life, when we can recognize what our expectations of ourselves are and have a reasonable check, if you will, right? Is it reasonable to expect this of myself? If you've never done social media marketing before, why do you have the expectation that you should be a pro at it? And we all do this, right? I mean, we've been talking about videos, and certainly this is a conversation Sydney and I have had, right? Where we're both not so comfortable, but we recognize this is something. So it's like, okay, instead of putting this expectation on ourselves that we have to do it perfectly and by ourselves, because all three of us are in that challenged world of wanting to be independent and just be able to figure it out. It's like, how do we soften that? Soft eyes at ourselves and go, no, that's an unreasonable expectation to have. Instead, how do I just play with this and figure it out? I think it was the comment I sent to you. How do you look at it with some curiosity, as this is an experiment that we're going to figure out, and what works for me may not work for you or somebody else, but in the lesson of it is just kind of looking at it with a bit softer gaze.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Glenda, because this is a great segue into the next piece. I want to be mindful of the time because I know we're nearing 10 o'clock. I think this will take maybe 5 minutes. So are you both okay if we go over by 5 minutes or 10 minutes? How are you for time, Anna?
I'm good.
Okay. So just to close this model, we've got those actions that are producing the result of you're really seeing some physical manifestations that are quite terrifying for you. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And that's real. Like, so I hear all of these things you're saying, like, and this is what it comes down to, is this is how powerful our thoughts are. And this is why it's so important to start paying attention to these things.
Absolutely.
So when it's like, what do we do with this? So we've got the awareness, and now what? And Glenda talked about this beautiful concept of looking at ourselves with soft eyes. How I love to use this tool of the model in a more empowering way is I actually start with the result that I want to produce. So we can still write the model out with C, the circumstance, T, the thought, F, the feeling, A, the actions, and then R, the result. But we jump in and say, the circumstance is the same. It's the fact, like that's the neutral piece. So the circumstance is building an online presence on Instagram and Facebook. What result do you want to produce?
Building a successful online presence on Instagram and Facebook.
And why is that important to you?
For Aging with Yoga. Because I think, because I'm 68, so I know I think I'm a living example of the benefits of yoga to an aging body, but more so how I've had to adapt my practice and what I have to do in order to continue to do what I do. And so how can I share that insight, with people of an aging body who are doing yoga so that they can continue to do it safely. Basically, I want to help people build a sustainable yoga practice.
And there's a particular demographic you're looking at too.
Yes.
So tell me about that. So who are you helping?
Um, I would have said to you, people who currently have some sort of yoga practice and are either starting to find it too difficult to go to regular classes, or they're starting to find that because of things that are happening to their body, you know, they're either maybe starting to hurt themselves, or they pull back or don't want to go. However, having said that, I had a friend text me yesterday who said, oh my God, I came across one of your videos, and he doesn't do yoga, but he said you know, it's about going upstairs and tripping, you know, catching your toes on a stair. And that's because, you know, we forget as we age to do simple things like lift our knees high, you know, like to step higher.
Right.
And so I just did a little thing on that. So, and he doesn't do yoga, but he was like, oh my God. So maybe it isn't just people who already do yoga. Maybe it's just an older body, I'd say 50 and older, who are, I don't want to say who are discovering yoga, because my videos really are not, you know, teaching you how to do basic postures.
Right.
It's, you know, if you're doing Utkatasana, if you're doing chair posture, you know, how do we lengthen the lumbar, right? How do we take the support
Right.
in the legs and feet and not carry it all in the torso? You know, what do you do with your arms so that you...
Right. So I'm going to interject here. So
Yeah.
I think this is something we get lost in the weeds sometimes.
Okay.
These projects. I've written down here as the result, you want to help 50 plus people live better in their bodies.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
I
want to help 50 plus people live better in their bodies.
Does that resonate?
Yeah. But through yoga.
Through yoga. Yeah. How you do it, that's what this online presence is for in your videos, and
right.
That's all the actions, really.
Yeah.
So.
And it excites me, like when I can talk it out, like with the two of you, it's like, it's exciting. But
yeah, it lights you up because your heart wants to do it, and
yeah.
you've got the know-how. You've been living, like, your life has led you to this. You've been gathering all the tools and resources to do it your entire life. What feeling, like, what energy inside your body, the feeling, do you want to create this with? What do you want to feel while you're creating this result?
How do I want to feel? See, I've got a big smile on my face as I think of how do I want to feel. So I want to feel, it makes me feel so good when I think I can share something and make a difference in somebody's life. So joy.
Joy.
You know, yeah, joy. Yeah, I want to feel just a sense of giving back, you know, of contributing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just this, like, you know, here's something for you. You know, if you can use it or take from it, it's mine to offer to you.
Yeah. Well, and remember, so when we go back to the thoughts, the autopilot thoughts,
Yeah.
they're all about me, the I, right?
Right.
Self. And the intention is really about what you're giving out. It has nothing to do with you. It's about the others, right? So this might be helpful in building. So here we create a thought that's going to help produce the feeling of joy. So you just said right now, you want to share this knowledge, right? What's a thought you can create that makes you feel that joy?
Oh, I have something to contribute.
Mhm.
I have something to contribute.
Yes,
I'm
you
going to
do.
start crying.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Yeah, I have something to contribute.
Mhm.
And you know what? The Facebook, the Instagram, the videos, like those are all just the tactics.
Right. Yes.
And
Yes,
that's,
they are.
it's just the tactics.
Yeah.
And just like you figured out how to do yoga once
Yeah.
upon a time when you didn't know how to do it, or you figured out how to stamp architecture drawings, or do like, there's so many things you never knew how to do before, and you worked to figure them out.
But I went to school, you know, I had teachers. Okay. And this is, other than Glenda,
Anna, you
poor
have,
Glenda.
I sent you names to people you can follow. There's lots of great teachers out there.
no, but beyond that, that's like, those are circumstances, and
Exactly.
those are neutral. And you have Google, there's a whole world of teachers out there, right? But you have something to contribute, and the actions are those bit by bit, piece by piece.
Yeah.
You know how to figure things out. You figured things out in the past.
Yeah.
You're
I
a
have.
brilliant independent woman. And so reminding like coming back to this thought, just like that little girl in the mirror.
I have something to contribute. That's so much more empowering than I'm terrified or this terrifies me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have something to contribute. And then the end result would be joy.
Yeah. And then the piece that I want you to think about today is, what actions can you take from a place of joy? So actions that give you joy, that help you towards this result. So use that thought.
Okay.
The power of the action. And then send me an email with those actions. Glenda and I want to know what the actions are.
Okay. Okay.
So that essentially is what I have for you, but this is just bringing it back to where we started. Your part, you are a magical one-time mega event in the universe that was brought here for one, to help 50 plus people live better in their bodies through yoga. You were meant to share that gift amongst many other gifts that you have, but that is one that is clear. And you are always creating. So you can create from terror, or you can create from joy and from love. And you have the power to do that and to choose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. My chest is no longer hurting right now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And
No,
I want to pass the mic over to Glenda.
Thank you, Sydney. I always appreciate you. A couple of things I wanted to make sure that we had it, because of course we're in the here and now together, and thank you so much, Anna. But I know that there'll be lots of people joining and watching later on in their own time, and so I wanted to make sure that people knew what was happening in the month of March, which strangely is very fast approaching. So we have a theme of wisdom for the month. And there's lots of things going on. So one of the things is our Make 2020 Amazing event will be happening on Tuesday, March 24th at 7 p.m. And in the month of March, we're going to be offering a practice to glean wisdom from the body, mind, and spirit. So very much aligned with keeping this conversation going into next month. So that's on March 24th at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Central, I should say. Since
Okay.
we're all literally in different time zones right now.
I have to remind myself what time zone Toronto was in.
Yeah, which will be different because March 8th, the time changes. So,
Oh, Lord.
don't worry about time zones. Everything will be on the website and on Facebook, and you'll be able to see. One of the other things that Sydney and I are offering in March for spring into spring, is some delicious, as I'm calling them, self-care goodies, which you can either take in bite-sized pieces or can kind of carve off a half a day and join us for a bunch of things. And it's really around this idea of self-care, but self-discipline, you know, as an act of self-care. There'll be yoga and movement, some meditation, some journaling, and just at this beautiful space of probably 2 or 3 hours of information that you can take in and allow yourself to plant some beautiful seeds in the springtime that we can develop over the year. A couple of other things is once a month on the second Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. Central, I offer a group meditation, and it's very much aligned to what we've been talking about. Sydney and I have been talking about throughout these sessions, which is about building awareness and cultivating a different relationship with ourselves through mindfulness and meditation. So that is at 10 a.m. It is live, but it's also recorded so people can watch that at any time. And again, the focus for March is on wisdom. And one of the other things that I'm going to be offering, again, very much related to this, but in a different context, is the webinar on my 5 core lessons about life that I've learned from my work watching death as a death doula. And so very much life affirming, how do we kind of look at death, but life from a life affirming perspective, and what some of those lessons have been. All of the events are listed on mindfulhealingspace.com under events, as well as on Facebook. There's an events page on Mindful Healing Space. And both Sydney and I try and kind of post on the Instagram as well. But certainly Facebook and the website have all the details and information as well. This is where this recording will be housed in other, so you can watch it later again if you like. And with that, I say thank you.
Yeah.
I say thank you to both of you. The sense of support and having a community out there is invaluable. It truly is. So thank you both for generating what you have generated and for making this possible.
Yay. Well, thank you both for joining me this morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Yeah, we're all figuring it out together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. Same to the two of you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.